Hi! Welcome back, everyone, to the Arcane Archive. We have a very fun and, well, painful, some fun for maybe some, painful for others, because we're bringing back the third installment of our newest segment, Cautionary Chronicles. Yes, we are back once more to showcase a number of woeful, terrible tales of cringe and pain, debauchery, and whatever else, and to offer our own personal insights, experiences, and thoughts on these scenarios and situations and unfortunate incidences. Sammy, how are you feeling about the choices we've picked today?
I'm already angry. I'm already angry. One in particular makes me very angry, but yeah, we have a couple. I mean, we're gonna have plenty to talk about.
Yes, we have picked a few at this point to showcase. We'll see if we can kind of get through all of them here or there, but already we have quite the smorgasbord of cringe, frustration, anger, and you know what? But you know what? I feel like we also were able to kind of maybe not balance it out, but at least slide a little bit of true like growth, self-realization, and maybe hopefully some positive progress here, you know, to maybe like even out or at least do a little bit of a palate cleanser between these stories here. So with that being said, let's go ahead, let's just jump right in head first to the first story for the day, and then we can be done with this all the faster. God. So
wait, so are you doing the horrible one first, or am I doing the horrible one first?
I'm gonna do okay. We're gonna do the funny one first,
okay,
as an introduction, and then after that you're gonna do the angry one after that.
The one that makes me angry. Cool.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yes,
So here's what we're gonna do. So to start us off, our first story of the day. Am I the asshole for not letting my D&D players run a horse brothel? So, OP puts down.
One would assume it's for horses. It's not for horses.
Hey, don't ruin the twist, Sammy. Don't ruin the twist.
It's not a twist. It's horrible.
We'll let them see. We'll let them all make their own personal thoughts and opinions when we read through. So, I DM for a party of 9. So, needless to say, things can get a little hectic sometimes. So, when my party's druid came up with an idea to get them some easy coin, I was caught a little off guard. My party just made it to one of the largest cities in my homebrew world. Think about the size of Waterdeep. The druid asked me if, since there are a lot of people in this city, would the market for people who are interested in a brothel service be bigger? Naturally, I said yes, assuming he planned on going to a brothel. He instead offered to work in the brothel for a day, assuring the owner of maximum profit. With a high charisma roll, the owner agreed and gave the druid a personal room. The druid then revealed his hand. This whole time, he planned on using conjure animals in combination with wild shape to summon a militia of horses with the sole purpose of pleasuring the freaks of my city. This shook me to my core. After almost an hour of arguing with my players, who all jumped up on the bandwagon against me, my druid told me he was literally putting his hoof down and that I was ruining his fun. He said that if I didn't let him get that bag, he would permanently leave the campaign. I still refused, and he stormed out of the room and later blocked my phone number, ending in an IRL 6-year friendship. So,
yeah, I just want to point out, best comment. The DM.
Am I the asshole?
Yeah, the DM missed a golden opportunity when the player asked if he could do this, and he responded was nay. Look,
it's the highest voted comment for a reason.
I'm gonna put this out here, and I don't know how true this is, but this gentleman sounds like a furry. And while I do not hate furries, I do have a problem with you taking your weird hobbies and shoving them on other people. And I don't care if all other 8
I
players jumped on
mean,
the bandwagon. Don't put your DM through that.
here, here,
That's
here,
not fair.
here. Okay, so before we kind of get more into it for ourselves, let's read some of the comments because I think they do say it really nicely. The second comment up there is by another individual. It goes, okay, so at the risk of polluting my own search history, I got curious. According to Wikipedia, I didn't get that curious. The percentage of people who are merely zoophiliac, experience sexual attraction to animals, is estimated at around 2%, meaning the number of people into that other thing, actually engaging in such acts with animals, is a fraction of that. And people who might be specifically into horses would be a fraction of that. And people who'd be willing to openly walk into a brothel where it was known that horse interaction was going on will be a fraction of that. If nothing else, let's also note that in the Middle Ages, most places punished such acts with execution. So let's be, in my honest opinion, generous and say each of those fractions is 10% or around there. Canonically, the city of Waterdeep has somewhat less than 2 million people. So, in comparison, your city has, again, estimated theoretically around 40 potential customers. Not exactly going to be lining up around the block to engage in said activities. How often does the average customer even really visit a brothel to begin with? So can't really promise the brothel owner maximum profit from this venture. That's absolutely true too. Now,
See, I do love the comment right under that though.
yeah.
The I don't know what it says about me when I read the title. I somehow hoped they were talking about a stud farm.
Yep.
Because that's a
that
genuine
makes
actual thing.
That makes way more sense. It's a literal business. It's a literal thing. Like it's just like another great comment is I can understand the need for wacky shenanigans, but the player shouldn't be surprised or salty when the GM doesn't want you to go there or when anyone else doesn't want you to go there. Yes, absolutely. And dude right below that's like, yeah, anyone who gets upset because a person doesn't want, intimate interaction with whatever, with animals in my game can F right off. I don't care if we've been friends for years. That one is a weird hill to die on. It absolutely
is.
Like to literally say he's going to permanently leave the campaign because he's not allowing this particular strange, crazy, weird like I wouldn't even say that they're a furry even because this isn't even necessarily furry like behavior. This is straight up, this is even more so.
We'll agree to disagree on that one.
It's okay, come on, bro. It's not because again, if it was, then it would be like they would just be engaging themselves as like because again, furries aren't necessarily just about that. It's very specific kind of kink and very specific kind of whatever.
It's more unfortunate that a lot of the people that have been exposed for this kind of thing have something to do with that community, but it's not the community's fault.
Exactly, and it's not.
I will admit that
this particular thing is much more, as they literally have stated, the best allitant, I don't want to say the word because that's
I'm going to put it this way: sex work is not a bad thing.
No,
and if your GM is okay with sex work and you have it in your campaign, that's fine. Things like brothels, prostitution, any of those things are normal in both fantasy and normal life.
In real life, that was a thing.
If you want to get exotic with it, there's a way to do it without being weird. Having different races of people is already exotic enough.
Literally,
who wants to Okay,
we saw it in Baldur's Gate 3. Yeah.
Literally,
they literally have an exact reference of that, and it works perfectly fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's like even in real life, they have literal places called like escort, agencies or businesses or whatever else, and it's like they can be perfectly professional, upstanding establishments, and it's just like, yeah.
And again, having a brothel in your game, not a problem, but
no.
It is up to both the DM and the party to understand that, if someone doesn't want this here, we have to respect that wish. And there is a way to get maybe a little bit more exotic or freaky with it without making people feel very uncomfortable with an illegal activity.
Without it getting literal, that is straight abuse. It's straight messed up.
Look, we won't even get into it, but legitimately what this person was suggesting, if you looked it up on the internet, could get you in trouble with the law. because it is legitimate jail time and a felony to do the things he was
Yeah.
so wanting to do in a D&D game. And I'm not talking about felony like, oh, I killed somebody, because that's normal in D&D. I'm talking activities that you don't even need to have as a part of your game.
No, well, he even literally specifically states that during this particular period of time, back in like, the Middle Ages or the Renaissance, whatever,
they would
like
kill you.
they would literally execute you for trying to do such things.
To the point where there are certain cultures that are known for having that problem in the past and are
Yeah.
still made fun of it, made fun of this day. Like, I don't know.
This was just a weird, like, again, it's one thing if you just wanted to make a joke, even the joke itself is weird enough, but even the fact that he was so doggedly trying to stick to this thing.
Like,
I mean, he literally said putting his hoof down. If he literally said that, like,
dude, I wouldn't, like, the fact that he let him quit, I would have been like, dude, get the fuck out of my house.
leave. If you're really trying to do, like, and don't even get us wrong. Again, here's the thing, right? I've been involved in some campaigns before where you can do some wacky, crazy, maybe even some I consider messed up stuff. But even with that, this is just like, what the actual shit?
I'm gonna be honest. I feel about this the same way I feel about SA. In any kind of campaign where you have people,
none.
You don't do it. You don't do it, dude.
None. Now, here's the thing. You can if your setting is dark, right? You have like a more
story beats
you can
about
have more
it.
grim dark. Exactly. Here's the thing.
Your players shouldn't be doing it.
But you don't need to be actively describing or nor should your players be inflicting nor receiving that in any way, shape, or form. That is never ever going to be an okay instance. Like, unless it's like literally, okay, some bad stuff happens, you don't need to necessarily describe or actually describe the scene like happening actively. Be like, hey, some bad stuff happened, and you would only do that specifically to give them the opportunity to overcome that situation. You don't do it just to inflict. You don't do it as a joke. You don't do it as anything like that. If you're going to do it at all, in a very limited extent, it has to serve a true purpose, productive, progressive purpose. And it is incredibly difficult to do, and so it is best usually to be left alone or to be used as a story flavor, like just an impression of like, hey, like, bad stuff happens in this particular world. Like,
here's something, like, you could use certain things that we don't like to think about in life as a framework for, oh, this is why, you live in this society and there's this evil group of people and they do all these evil things. And like, you can use those things as a fuel for hatred, like for
for
motivation,
righteous anger, wrath,
like that's
rebellion,
fine. And I do agree, like, you can have a grimdark campaign, you can include themes that people may not be comfortable with, but
even not in grimdark, things happen, bad things happen even in a normal thing.
But you should not have it, first of all, have your players be interacting with it in a direct sense, unless they're stopping it from happening. You don't need to be graphic about it. You don't need, but again, this isn't even the DM's fault. Usually it's the DM that brings these things in.
that can start doing, or a problem player, which this kind of that's
this. But
point being is, like, this whole mentality and the fact that, like, again, I understand a lot of people come into DM or D&D or any tabletop RPG thinking like, oh, the biggest appeal is you can do whatever you want, right? Your imagination is the limit and everything is allowed.
But that's
not the case. Everything is allowed within reason. What is the actual logical reasoning for this? Why are you doing this? Really?
All I know is that sometimes D&D or tabletop games or video games bring the fucking Patrick Bateman out.
Oh, they bring the worst out of people sometimes.
And
you know what? With that being the case, let's go ahead.
We're gone. Like, that's a no-go.
Let's go ahead and shift over to another one in that exact transition and a bit of a segue there. Sam, why don't you go ahead and take it away to show again another instance of maybe, like, a person not being their best due to being involved in this kind of thing here.
Talking about the one that I picked out,
the one that makes you angry.
Yeah. Okay. So the title of this is, in quotes, "Learn to count. I'm disabled, mate." That's the response to that phrase. Little tidbit from how I left my last campaign. I joined a new campaign at a local library where most of the people already knew each other from a previous campaign. No biggie. In the listing, the DM had specified that this was going to be a story-heavy campaign with less focus on combat, which worked for me. However, this group had a wonderful specific.
The first part is a little rough. Just go with it.
They had someone named Todd. Todd was impatient. Todd was snarky. Todd was everything you expect. In the lead up to session 0, he would brush off any comments about roleplay and really just did not want to be,
to be included in any common backstory.
He didn't care. Is basically
he did not want to make a more connected kind of group environment.
A few sessions in, and I was having the time of my life. But Todd was putting strain on everyone. He decided that because there was too much NPC interaction, the best thing to do would be to murder hobo everything and everyone. During roleplay scenes, he would often butt in and try to get a move on, getting annoyed when it took too long, and would start texting on his phone, even once taking a phone call during a session. Anyway, we're in a dungeon that had been hyped up a lot. DM was super excited about it. We're all excited for this. One thing about me is I have a reading disability with numbers specifically. DM knew before I joined and everyone was aware of it. It came up naturally in conversation. I have a special set of die I made myself to help read the numbers quickly and usually bring a calculator to sessions. However, this day I'd totally forgotten them and was borrowing someone else's dice. The lovely person sitting next to me was very happy to read the numbers off for me after I rolled and do the modifier calculations for me, but this seemed to piss Todd off for whatever reason. Every time they'd read it out loud for me, he would scoff or roll his eyes. Eventually, he told me I was a big boy who could count up to 20 and laughed it off as a joke. I was really embarrassed at this comment, and after another turn, he made a comment again to the person next to him. Don't really know what he said because he was whispering, but he obviously was talking about me. During a quick break, I went to the DM and asked her if she could get Todd to knock it off, but she kind of brushed me off and said he was right that I could read the numbers myself. When we got back to the table, I started reading the dice myself and working out modifiers and such, and obviously I was taking way longer than having someone else do it for me. This also royally pissed Todd off, but his last straw was when I screwed up and said I got a 21 instead of my actual number 13. When the person next to me realized and corrected my mistake, Todd lost it, telling me off for honestly who knows what. Mid rant, I looked at our DM and realized she wasn't going to stick up for me either, and neither was anyone else. Even the person sitting next to me could only muster, "That's not nice." I realized it just wasn't worth dealing with and left. Getting an onslaught of Todd texts telling me that I abandoned the team and he was just trying to get me to grow up. Person next to me apologized for not saying much and ended up leaving soon afterwards. From what I hear, it ended because the DM wouldn't stop pandering to Todd's BS. Now, this pisses me off. Not only do I have friends who legitimately have learning disabilities or struggles with specific things, they are perfectly normal people who can do everything that you can do. It just might take them a little bit longer. And with interest in not slowing down the game, this person had their own set of dice made, brings a calculator, is usually very prepared, told them about it ahead of time, and then when someone tried to help them, was disrespected by someone else at the table. I don't know if you can feel it, but I'm very angry about this.
I have a personal relation, or not like relation to like the OP or anything, but I have a personal experience and kind of connection to this because I also I do believe I probably suffer a bit from like dysgraphia, which is usually the disability of like I can read perfectly fine and great, so I'm not dyslexic, but dysgraphia is specifically like the thing where you have an issue or a difficult time like writing. And that's always been the case for me. I've always been great at reading, but writing has always been a very difficult thing for me to do unless I take very deliberate, specific like energy to focus very hard. Like, so it's always been a bit hard for me. And so like I completely understand what this person is feeling and kind of going through here, because that happened to me when I was younger all the time. Like I was always very smart. I always got, plenty high grades and everything or whatever, but like when it came to writing, I always had to kind of ask like, how do you spell this thing again? And it would be like, not a super difficult word or whatever, but then fucking other kids or people would be like, you don't know how to spell that, or say other shit like that all the time, and it would make me feel very embarrassed or very like bad, because I was like, is something wrong with me? And it's like, in this particular instance, not only that, so that is a thing that I also feel very connected and understanding with this person. But even on top of that, the fact that this guy is getting on his case about somebody else, we do that all the time anyway in D&D. Like literally, you just have normal people who might not be able to freaking add numbers super fast or quickly anyway, and so they have somebody else who does it quicker. And it's like if time you're trying to just keep combat rolling smoothly, a person would be like, okay, so I rolled a 10. I have a +7 to the thing. And then I have an added 2, so you have a 19 total to the roll. Somebody else might say, because they were able to calculate faster. People do that all the time when nobody might have an actual disability that might be affecting or messing with a person's ability to produce or to process information mentally or internally. And so, like, another thing being that really pisses me off is the fact that the GM isn't like the only thing I can think of is apparently maybe Todd and the GM might be dating, and so
or
she's
they've
like,
just known each other longer.
well, but apparently a lot of people have. It hasn't just been Todd. Other people have known each other as well this whole time. In fact, it makes me even more weird. It's like, okay, if apparently Todd was part of the old regime, so to speak, why was he not trying to have any of his backstory connected to anybody else's at that point? Why is the GM still allowing Todd to act like such an asshole to new players? And like, I don't like no one at the table aside, and like even the only the other table or the person next to them was like, oh, they could only muster up a that's not nice.
Well, see,
like,
I was going to comment on that because I do understand, wanting to do the right thing, but you don't know what the situation of this other person is, and they might not be very confident, and having someone yell or be so animated and aggressive can scare people. And if Todd's done this before, they're probably not used to sticking up for, or they don't know how to handle it. I'll put it this way. I feel bad for the person apologized for not doing more, but they were the only one that cared at all and were willing to help OP and try to make this work.
Because there were 9 people. No, wait, no, not 9
not
people.
9. This is just
that was the other one, right. No.
Yeah.
But this was still like, I don't think he specifies how many people there were,
No.
but it seemed like there were at least a decent amount of them. By him saying, like, apparently it was like at a local library where a number of the people knew each other from previous campaigns.
I assume it's probably like, from 4 to 6 people.
Probably. So not a small amount. So it's like,
but I mean, obviously they were enough of them were used to how Todd acts, but ostensibly fuck Todd. I
mean that's I mean, I could not, dude. I could not handle if a dude is just being a straight up dickhead, like douche canoe. I'm like, bro, stop. I don't care if it's towards me. I don't care if it's towards somebody else. If it's unfair, if
not everybody's like that, Adam.
I'm aware of that, but I'm saying this is like, again, like,
oh no, I do the same thing.
Stand up for yourself, stand up for other people. If you see like maybe they don't have the strength to stand up by themselves, if you see some shit, like the point is you're trying to have fun. And it's normally not ever going to be fun if you have an asshole who's screwing around and like messing with other people. Now, it's one thing if the person in question that's being messed with is kind of an asshole themselves, if they're doing a thing and they're like being either inconsiderate, unreasonable, selfish, or even just straight up dysfunctional or destructive, right? Yeah. Intentionally. At that point, it's like, yeah, okay, he's being an asshole, but maybe you should at that point have an actual conversation with both people to be like, hey, what you're doing isn't cool. We understand why you're being this way, but how you're handling it isn't helping and it's not right. So let's actually try to have a conversation to be productive about how we can get. And an even bigger thing being is, I don't know why nobody said anything if it's before. If he literally, like Sam said, if he has his own personal tools to help with his disability here, and he's brought them before, people were aware of it, and he just forgot them this session for whatever reason, it can happen. Then it's like, bro, give him a freaking pass, man. It's not that big a deal.
Well, it shouldn't even be a pass or not. It should just be, yeah, we're okay with this. There's no bad
that's what I mean. It's like, okay, if he starts to kind of drag on with calculations and stuff or whatever, or if he says the wrong numbers at times because he miscalculated, it's like, okay, that's fine. It happens. Like, again, give him a pass. It's not that big a deal. People can still help him. Like, it's how hard is it? How hard is it really for a person who's Add. You're just doing addition. You're helping this person add some numbers together to get the right freaking
And it
thing.
sounded like it was
How hard
working
is
out
that?
just fine for
Yeah.
them. I think, you know, I feel bad for this person 100%. And I understand them wanting to try to make it work and wanting to play. But the moment during the break that they went to the DM and the DM brushed it off completely, and in fact almost agreed with Todd, is that you shouldn't have even come back to the table.
Yeah.
And
Like
I know some people are like, oh, but he was already there. Like, it's rude to do that. No, what's rude is to be
No.
treated like that.
for
And then they
no
expected him to
actual
come
real
back.
reason. Yeah.
Like,
Screw
and then
that, dude.
they blamed him when he didn't come back to the next session. Like, my
Like,
problem is
that was even worse. Is he saying, "Oh, you're abandoning the team"?
yeah,
Bro, nigga, you weren't even part of this team.
yeah,
Bro,
and
you didn't
like,
want to have a dual backstory. Shut the hell up, bro. No one gives you don't give a crap.
I think, you know, what gets me the most is I think almost this person felt bad to a degree, and you shouldn't.
No.
It was, and he tried to do the right thing by, instead of confronting Todd or yelling at him at the table, you tried to go to the DM and do the right thing and try to organize some sort of discussion, or hope that since the DM knew Todd for longer, that maybe it would make a difference. You weren't trying to cause problems. I appreciate that. I hope you bring that attitude to the tables that you hopefully get to play at again. And I hope that people are more receptive of something that really shouldn't bother them at all, because it doesn't change anything. So, it sounds like you didn't talk about not being able to play or communicate or do everything else in the game.
No.
If your only issue
is
doing quick
the
math,
calculations and math
and like not necessarily being able to read the dice well or something of that nature and putting the numbers together, that's not a problem. And in fact, like, even those of us who can do math just fine, usually, as Adam stated, there's someone at the table that usually does the calculations faster anyway. My first DM is a math teacher. I would roll on a. I'd be like, I rolled this, and I have to add these two, and this was before we did D&D Beyond, so like it was paper. I had to add on paper.
It was even harder to keep track of that stuff.
You know what? The reality is that we got to a certain level, and I had to roll so many damn dice and do so many calculations that eventually I was just giving him raw numbers, and he knew what to add. Because it took me too long. Is it because I'm stupid? No. Is it because you're stupid? No. It's just some people aren't good at those things, and that's okay.
Or they can't process it as fast as others, and that's like, dude, not a bad thing.
I'm the only note taker in our campaign. I can't write. My handwriting is crap. I can't spell, and I can't write quickly. So I have to ask people 3 or 4 times to tell me what happened, so I can actually get the information down.
You can get accurate stuff. Same here.
And you know what? Like, I'm always like, sorry to annoy you. I need you to repeat. Yeah, because you said things too fast.
Or can you take it slow for me real quick so that I can get all the necessary information? Because it's like and that's okay. So let's real quick. Let's go down to the comments, because I definitely see there's overwhelming support for this guy. Plenty of other people who have the same kind of situation, or they've are expressing their opinions and their experiences. So the first top comment, my best friend has dyscalculia or dyscalculia, I believe. Yeah, so I think I said it right. Dyscalculia. So I know through her experience how hard dealing with numbers is for you. I'm regularly doing math for her in both in and out of D&D. I'm sorry you went through that. Some people are just jerks. You should try playing online with a VTT. It's not as fun as in person, but the math being done for you is amazing. Now, I mean, I think being even on a VTT, it can be just as fun as being in person, because you also see a lot of the more imagery. In fact, I like to use a VTT even in person. Like,
it does it for you.
Yeah. Well, not even just VTT, but it's like you can see things much more thing, and it's it's great. I mean, that's why we use like D&D Beyond. It's fantastic. Another thing, even with games in person, I'm using Roll20 off to the side. Exactly. Yeah. This person is saying, I've got severe ADHD and memory issues. No way I'm able to do all these calculations just by myself. Another person, I have dyscalculia 2 or dyscalculia 2, and D&D is so hard for me. It can get really frustrating because despite talking to the DM and other players about this, they just don't get it. I do my own math, but it takes me a little longer, and often I get it wrong. They get mad or frustrated and impatient if I don't answer right away with the correct answer. It sucks and has made me consider quitting. I've talked to them about it, but then they always mansplain my learning disability to me, and it's so freaking annoying. So no advice, but solidarity, OP. Non-disabled people are such asshats about disabilities more often than not. So here's the thing. Like, I don't necessarily know why they had to say mansplaining specifically. I think
I'm
it's
assuming. Well, we all
like,
know why. It's
I
because this
mean,
person's probably a woman, and all the people they talked to were men who decided to
yeah,
not actually listen to them.
yeah.
I'm
So
not
I
against the
mean,
term mansplain because
I mean,
sometimes,
I am, because the thing being is like it's still just like it doesn't matter if you're a man, you or a woman, you can just be a douchebag, like entitled,
sure,
condescending asshole. Doesn't Your gender does not exempt you from that particular thing.
no,
And so, like, the point being is like, because even apparently, like, even the GM, who was a woman in this story, also apparently wasn't being particularly supportive or
no.
helpful. So point being is, it's like,
It doesn't really. Yeah, it's just being an
the
ass.
well, it's being like, but she is right. Like this OP is right, where a lot of people who seemingly don't seem
Yes. Sorry, I
to
saw some vindictiveness and I'm
yes,
very
yes,
excited.
yes. It a lot of people who do not seem to know that maybe they also maybe suffer from something, or maybe if they don't technically suffer from a disability to a certain
Yeah.
extent, a lot of people, for whatever reason, seem to find it very difficult to showcase any amount of empathy or understanding for other people who do. Now, and you know what? To be fair, don't get me wrong, it is not an uncommon or rare occurrence for people to take advantage of or try to utilize a so-called disability as an excuse for their bad behavior.
Yeah.
However, this is
Is
not one
not
of
it.
those this is not one of
I,
those instances. He's doing everything that they can to not be inconvenient, to
yeah.
not be inconsiderate. He was communicative. He has his own things. He just he messed up a time. He didn't have all of his stuff with him to help maximize his efficiency or effectiveness, and that is okay. And in
Yeah.
those moments, it is up to people to be able to have that empathy and
Yeah.
understanding, and to be like, hey, we get it. Sometimes people do have shit that can kind of inhibit them from being as whatever. And I would even further once again submit, even so-called completely normal people, quote unquote, can still suck at math so much they take freaking forever to do calculations, or they even actively screw up their calculations. So
Yeah.
it's like,
I'm gonna put this out there. I think you're coming on some people using a quote unquote disability or problem to their advantage. I don't think someone's going to be using a issue with numbers to their advantage in a D&D campaign to excuse bad behavior.
they could literally be like, oh, because they could use it to try to cheat their rolls, right? To
Sure,
be
I
like,
guess that's
I
fair.
rolled this.
But
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize it. So they could.
That's more of an issue of someone just being a cheater, and that has nothing to do with the
Exactly.
disability.
But they
But
could use that as an excuse.
I do like this. I found a comment. If these games are sanctioned by the library, speak to the library, like the librarians, about it. Let them know that you were bullied out of a game due to your disability. Maybe even do so if they're not sanctioned by the library. The librarian might not want to host games that tolerate that kind of behavior. And then someone replied with this: bigots shouldn't be allowed to use libraries for their exclusive games. Be sure to include text from Todd if you decide to pursue this option, because they will absolutely try to lie about your departure from the campaign. And 12 hours ago, OP did respond. Haven't even a thought of that. Definitely gonna do that. Thank you. Vindictiveness wins again. I am very
Oh
excited.
yeah,
Look,
yeah.
we've talked about me before. I am a petty bitch. But this is actually something I agree with, not just because I'm petty. Um, what the thing about, and this will be the end of this. We can go on to the next story. But the thing about TTRPGs as a whole is the reason we love them so much is because of the collaborative. You can bring people in even if you don't know them and have a good time and have an experience that could be very important to some people. It could be very meaningful, have these human connections, interact with other people. It's a safe space for a lot of folks who want to get away from their real life, and to bring that bullshit from outside in, and to get people like in a public space like a library or a game store or a place where like people from the street come in and try something new, and then and people are acting that way, is so detrimental to people even understanding or getting into this hobby or having any interest in continuing it because of their bad experiences. So that reporting things like this, getting people who act this way out of it, is 100% something I agree with, and I'm happy to like. I hope that happens, and I hope they're not allowed to play there anymore, because it's not acceptable behavior. I don't care if this dude took 10 minutes per roll without help. You already had someone helping him, so just keep it that way. It's not that hard. The person seemed to be completely willing to do it and was happy to do so until y'all made it a problem. So, to those of you, if you ever see this, you're an asshole. And I hope your game gets ruined. And I hope you don't get to play at the library again. And I hope you have to play in some dusty basement and feel bad about yourselves, because you should. Thank you. That's the end of my anger.
Well said, Sammy. All right. With that, let's move on to the next story of the day, y'all. This next one is called "I Am the Cause of an RPG Horror Story." Now, I figured at this point, again, let's go ahead. We're gonna try and introduce that little palate cleanser we talked about earlier. If we want to talk about a person who, at some point, seemed to be able to kind of do some self realization, some internal consideration and journeys and stuff, and maybe came to a truly productive, progressive spot, I think it might be this OP here. So I want to write this as it's been eating away at me for over a year now. So I kind of want to get it off of my chest. He kind of lists out a couple of names here.
Partially asterisk.
Yeah,
names.
so it most likely the players' character names, I would assume. Basically it just says like Kip, Hen, Elv, Wiz. It's me if you're reading this. For reference, this happened in December of 2022. I'm a DM who has been playing for around 4 years now, and I enjoy it, and it's been my favorite hobby since I was introduced to it. I decided to try being a player for a while and joined a group playing D&D 5e. Honestly, it was great. At the start, I struggled to get out of the DM mindset and came up with crazy ideas that I'm sure were a bit disruptive to the other players, but the DM was super friendly and courteous, and I began to tone down my playing style and try my best to appreciate the other players at the table. We all got along very well. I had some very minor gripes at some story moments, but it was barely anything worth mentioning, and it wasn't hindering my enjoyment of the campaign at all. Now, unfortunately, outside of D&D, especially at that time, I was super stressed IRL. Nothing was going right in my life, and I was bitter and angry. Of course, this all came to a head in December, where I had a huge falling out with some close friends in real life, which might be my fault as well. Needless to say, I look at that month as one of the worst months of my entire life. This is where it all goes wrong. I'm in bed. I can't sleep. It's 5 a.m. and I have all this bitterness and rage and anger inside of me, and I have no healthy outlet to let it all out. So I decide to do the worst thing possible, and I go to the D&D Discord group, and I write a full, gigantic wall of text just ranting and raving about everything that's bothering me about the campaign. Whether it be story-related or player actions, it's all there, and it is horrible. After writing it, I leave the group before anyone responds, and because of the Discord rule, people can't message you if you don't share a group with them or don't receive any messages after. My message was hurtful and disgusting. The writings of someone who was hurting and lashed out at those around him. It hurt other people who had nothing to do with it and people I considered friends and who were nothing but friendly and kind to me. I was enjoying the campaign, and none of the things in the message had any effect on my enjoyment of the campaign. I was just depressed and angry and sad at myself, and I let it out on others. I reached out to the DM and sent an apology message 2 months later in February. And I tried reaching out to the players, but the Discord thing about sharing our server means my messages didn't reach them. I'm not asking for forgiveness, nor am I trying to justify my actions. What I wrote was horrible and hurtful. I'm writing this to share my story and to show how, when you have all these negative emotions bottling up inside of you, sometimes you end up hurting people closest to you and furthering your own isolation because of it. So that right there, I felt that is a very powerful freaking read right there. Like that is some real human, profound type of shit right there. Like that, I feel it is not often that I come across posts like this where this guy is just almost kind of literally bearing his soul at the moment. You know, and some people might be like, well, this seems really overly serious just for a freaking D&D game. Like, it's just like, you know, it's like, well, but that's the thing, right? Like, that's what we've been saying this whole time, is that this hobby, this game, this experience, ironically enough, weirdly enough, really starts to bring out like the best and also the worst in people because of the effect it has on your ability to just express yourself, you know, to be whoever you feel like you want to be, or maybe who you maybe even really are to a certain extent, you know, instead of how you feel like you should be or have to act in real life in whatever situation or circumstance or whatever you find yourself in. And this guy here, you know, yeah, he clearly messed up big time. He clearly seems to have some anger issues, some maybe some imposter syndrome maybe going on, some definite huge insecurity.
Had a rough time and chose the wrong way to vent
Well,
those
well,
feelings.
that's exactly how that kind of works, though. It's like if you feel like it, he felt the only way to like release that shit or to get some semblance of like satisfaction or justice or vengeance or whatever something was to then take it out on them, even though they didn't deserve it, they didn't do anything wrong. And he snapped, right? Because he couldn't find anyone or anything that he felt he could talk to safely and openly. And that's that in essence, this is a great showcase of like, hey, don't just let shit sit inside of you, just roiling and bubbling and ravaging your shit until you can't hold it in anymore, and you just end up, you know, regurgitating it in its most toxic form, right?
Yeah.
Talk about it. It's okay. It's okay to talk. Find somebody, anybody. If you have to maybe look for a therapist, you know, look for, you know, a family member, a close friend, you know, just talk about it. Let it out a little bit. Be like, and again, do it in a way that you don't have to be harmful or shitty or toxic to other people. That is a possible thing. You can let that stuff out without it having to be a literal aggressive attack or hostile thing against other people. It's about you being with them to request support from them, right? It's about you to unload some of your burden, and they can then help you hold it and then set it down and release it. You're not going to throw it at them where they have to like catch it or take it in the face. You know, just take it off, ask for help to hold it so you can let it down and then let it go.
Yeah. I definitely, I feel a lot of sympathy for this person. Mostly because like we've all been there, or I've been on the other end of stuff like this too.
Yeah.
Where
Same.
both, you know, I've been on the end where sometimes you can fix it. You know, people like this, especially someone who is willing to put themselves out there, albeit with anonymity, but there is something to be said about writing all this out and admitting like it was me.
I did. Yeah,
I did this.
I
and it
was the problem,
and I'm the problem. And I, you know, I hope you learned from that. But the reality is like sometimes you can still fix this, and it sounds like you tried. And I hope for your sake,
and maybe still trying even now.
Yeah, you know, I mean, obviously, if you're still thinking about it this much, it bothers you, and I hope you can find a way to mend that, whether that's just for yourself or for the people that you seemingly have hurt. It also sounds like you haven't actually been able to talk to these people. You don't really know how hurt they are. I can tell you from experience that sometimes, depending on how poignant things are, you can either be like, okay, well, that guy's having a bad day, or ow, that was directed at me, or that seems very personal. And I don't know what you wrote. Obviously, you just described it a certain way, but like, I've been in this situation before where someone blows up, whether it's because of their life or like genuinely harmful circumstances to themselves, where like you can't even really blame them once you realize what's going on, because people do break. People are human. It's part of the process. And a lot of the like pretty much all the comments here, there aren't very many of them, but all of them are pretty positive in the sense that
they're all very supportive about
like,
it, you know,
of like, yeah, you fucked up, but like good on you for realizing that and being,
you know, you obviously were having a rough time and you just picked the wrong way to vent, and that you know that says it right there. I mean, the top rated one right here, a little bit more in depth, is like, you know, I don't think you're the only one who has been there, man. I have reacted from those very same feelings, though not necessarily in that same context and to that, same extent or degree. But, thank you for sharing your story, because it's a reminder that a lot of times when people are awful, it's not necessarily because they're just awful people, but maybe it's because something else is going on in their life and they don't know how to handle it. It's also true that in the internet world today, it is often easy to burn bridges you wouldn't normally be able to burn in real life. There's this feeling like the next group or the next thing is just around the corner, or these are not real people. They're just text or voices I hear online. And that can sometimes exacerbate the worst in us. I will just say this. Hopefully you learn from the exchange and will be a lot more careful with those late night wayward thoughts, and remember that there are other people, true people, on the other end. Not only because they have feelings and stuff, but because they're people you might actually like and enjoy to continue a relationship with. It's good for no one when these things happen, but they do nonetheless. And the only thing you can really do is, do
Learn
your
from
best
it.
to learn from it. As some people have said, it is the true measure of a person, not necessarily with the inability to break or to feel pain or to be broken, but with how effective or how willing and open they are to fixing things after it's happened,
Yeah.
after the break,
Uh,
after the break.
I think the way I look at this is that they tried to do the right thing after the fact, and that's
And I think they still are,
I would say that's more than some of the people I've interacted with.
Oh
So,
yeah,
good
100%.
on you for that. I
Like,
hope you know what
some,
I hope that these people see this post, and I hope they
yeah,
they respond to you, or you're able to reach out and actually apologize to them,
mend those
and like
bridges.
you may not be the same friends you were before, but at least you can have solace in the fact that what you said isn't digging away at these people.
No,
And if it is, then you'll have some work to do to fix that, but it's okay. It's a
yeah,
good thing. A lot of people run into things in their life where they lose people for whatever reason, and sometimes there is a way to get those people back. Maybe it's not in the same extent, but there might be a way, and so I wish you the best of luck with that. This is
agreed.
a tough one. This is a tough thing to write down.
It is, man. I mean, that's what I'm saying. He's really bearing his soul here, and I think that this, again, more people like should be aware that, hey,
We're just human.
people are human, and they're gonna make mistakes, but also like that's where that empathy comes in, right? Like we can again, the previous story with Todd, right? This is this is the actual best case scenario for Todd, right? Where Todd comes to grips with realizing that maybe his actions, his irritation, his annoyances with people and other people who whatever probably have more to do with his own shit and his own thing than them actually being the way that they are. And he's just still, even now, most likely, I don't know for certain, but
Yeah, fuck
he's still stuck in his own shit. He's in that denial where he's like, nah, I was in the right. He was being an annoying little, punk ass child who wasn't doing his own freaking math, and he was inconveniencing everyone else instead of being like, you know what? I was being an asshole there. Like that was not okay. That was not all right for me to do. Like and even with all of the other shit going on in my life, that is not an excuse for me to actively pick on or screw with or mess with another person, especially if they have like a legitimate like disability that's hampering or affecting their ability to function in a certain way.
Yeah, but also, fuck you, Todd.
Yeah, but fuck Todd. Obviously,
Yeah,
that is the moral of every story. Is just fuck Todd.
Yeah,
Fuck
get him
Todd.
out of here.
Yeah. But you know what? We're gonna go ahead. We're gonna move on to the next story here. This one is a particularly fun one, interesting one as well. And I will say this one here. Oh my God, you guys. Oh, you guys. When I read through this story, it was giving me visceral flashbacks to my own experience. And I've told you all a bit about it, my personal cringe campaign. And good Lord, this whoo, bro, I was having a visceral response to this shit. So let's get right into it. RPCs are just NPCs in our DM's poorly written story. So, we had just gone to level 5 and started our 9th session when our DM apparently decides to take the campaign in a completely different direction.
Yay.
Dude, Same.
Yay.
I've experienced that exact same. I would not be surprised if this GM was the same GM that I had to deal with. Our party, a Dragonborn Barbarian, Kobold Rogue, Half-Elf Bard, and an Aarakocra Cleric, which was me, are playing through Tomb of Annihilation, a D&D 5e campaign module. Last session, we had just finished a dungeon and taken a long rest before we decided to get back to town for our reward. Leaving the dungeon, our DM narrated that there was a fog rolling in from the river. We asked if it looked like the fog was normal, and our DM said yes. I wanted to make a nature check since I'm proficient, but the DM said it didn't matter since there was nothing special about this mist. Taking a few steps into the mist, suddenly there is an impassable fence behind us. Our party is discussing what's going on when we see a projectile randomly hit our barbarian in the chest. No, the DM didn't even roll, instantly dealing 98 points of damage, which was more than twice her max HP, taking her out in one hit instantly. Our DM then states she is only unconscious anyway and asks what we would like to do next. At this point, I ask if we should roll initiative, but the DM says no. As the cleric, I heal the barbarian for 11 HP, but according to our DM, she still stays unconscious. The rogue and bard at this point are looking for a source of the attack, but the DM says that they can't see anything through the mist. Fair enough, I say. I clear the mist using gust of wind to where the attack originated, but I can't see anything, even with a 26 perception check. Suddenly, a second projectile flies out of the mist and hits my wing, disabling my ability to fly. I am absolutely pissed at this point, and I'm looking for any spells or items that could help us in this situation. I suddenly get hit by another projectile, which knocks me unconscious. The bard and rogue try different things for half an hour, but they as well get downed eventually. At that point, we all wake up in an unfamiliar area somewhere near a forest and see a path going in. The barbarian has an arrow sticking out from her chest and is told to take it easy. No healing or medicine check helped. I'm told my wing is now completely detached, and I have to carry it around for the remainder and considerable future. A dwarf that we met before is sitting near a pile of stone next to the forest, but he's unable to give any useful information, and any check we make to understand where we are is amounting to absolutely nothing. Exhausting all other possibilities, we simply leave him and go into the forest. We eventually get up to a big tree, but there is nothing there. So we continue on down the path until we get back to the dwarf and the entrance of the forest. Again, looking for clues amounts to nothing. No rolls seem to give us any added information or help to assist us in any way. So we just go back into the forest again. Now this time, however, we get to apparently a ruin with absolutely nothing in it and continue. Hey, you guessed it, we are right back at the dwarf. Going into the forest again, this time we see a little girl holding a doll. We ask her her name, how she got here, where we are, or where we should be going, and it does absolutely nothing. So we are again left with no info at all. The girl then says that she wants to follow us, but we decide to just leave her there. We go into the forest a few more times, which is different each time, but we still get no additional information. After 4 hours of playing this way with no combat, no social interaction, no anything except for just consistent walking, we decide to kick the pile of stone next to the dwarf and go into the forest again. We see the girl with the doll again, but ignore her. And after exiting this time, we see a Wendigo type monster where the pile of stone used to be and are asked to roll initiative. In the first round, the monster casts Entangle on the back line, restraining the bard, rogue, and myself. We deal a lot of damage in the next few rounds, but are unable to see any change to the creature. Eventually, I ask if we are free now because Entangle is a concentration spell, and we ended up dealing a lot of damage to the creature. The GM looks me right in the eyes and says that this monster does not have to concentrate. We feel like the monster has taken no damage at all, but the DM is writing everything down, so we should be doing something, right? Wrong. We did absolutely nothing. when finally the girl with the little doll appears out of the mist miraculously and casts one spell on the creature, killing it instantly. The girl then says we can leave this place only by making a wish. So we wish to go back to the time before we got sent to this place, but the DM says no. We try a few more wishes, so my wing is reattached, and the barbarian is healthy again, but nothing works. Then we just ask to go back, and we wake up at the front of the dungeon where we started the session. In the time that we were gone, our party mascot and our guide got taken out, so now we'll have difficulty going back to civilization. Our barbarian is still wounded, and I'm still unable to fly because I only have one wing. After the session, the DM said to me that I lost my wing because I was not proactive enough when the mist rolled in. Let's just say I'm not ever going to go back to a game run by this DM. We got no info. We made no difference to the story. Rolling bad or good had no effect on the outcome. Our boss battle got interrupted by an unliked NPC. We got maimed and beaten and battered, and our mascot got destroyed. Our DM had 4 players that wanted to play and were invested in the story. I do not understand how he can ruin a pre-written module. TLDR, our DM teleported us to a weird land where we got no info and were walking around for 4 in real life hours. He did not roll for his attacks or listen to what we wanted to do. At the end, we were not even allowed to kill the boss. After getting teleported back to where we started the session, half our party was maimed and our mascot was dead. Wow! This, again, oh my God, this, oh, geez. I don't even know where to start with this. Like, I can't, this exact scenario is almost word for word exactly the same type of shit that I had to go through, that all of us had to go through in the Cringe campaign that I was a part of. Same exact stuff. Like, no dice rolls at all. You would just take randomly out of nowhere, like, vast, ungodly amounts of damage with no chance to save, no ability to get any information, really, just random shit. And randomly out of nowhere, the GM would just switch up the direction completely of where he wanted to go, or the actual, like, theme or the idea of the campaign for something else randomly. For no reason, without consulting us, without doing anything. Like, good Lord. Like, I don't even know how to process how utterly garbage this whole thing was, dude. Like, audience, acolytes, apprentices, do I even have to stipulate? Do I have to even explain how utterly god-awful shit it is for a GM to literally railroad your players for no reason? For one, give them no ability to succeed at anything with actual dice rolls, which is the point of the game. And then, like, oh my God, Sammy, what do you think about this thing here?
Well, I mean, maybe it's just me. I've had a railroading experience similar to this, where it felt like what I was doing didn't matter. What we were doing didn't matter. Now, my experience is not nearly as bad as this. But this is legitimately, like, ulcer-inducing. I would argue that this DM shouldn't be DMing anything. They obviously have this idea that they are some sort of novel writer, and they're terrible. Look, I don't know how you add on something into a pre-written story that's somehow worse than the pre-written story. Usually pre-written stories are boring because it's like kind of an outline for something you can make better. Somehow you did the opposite of that, and you made a pre-written story worse. I would suggest giving up playing this game altogether, but that's not in the spirit of this channel. But yeah, that's a dick move. You shouldn't be DMing. You should be a player and see how that feels for a while before you get anywhere close to a DM screen. If this is what you think is interesting or fun for a party, it sounds like you wrote a book and you want something to happen a certain way, and you don't have any notion or ability to influence the party without being a complete dickhead. Because this isn't okay. The whole, oh, you're down now, and no, I took your wing off, and no, there's nothing you can do about it, and no, monster doesn't have concentration. Well, then they shouldn't have cast a spell. First off, there's a really cool way to get around that without being an asshole and cheating, and it's called giving monsters abilities. There's plenty of monsters that have abilities similar to Entangle that cannot be broken because there is no concentration on abilities. So do that. Be creative in any sense of the word. Don't just give the monster the ability to cast Entangle. Do your fucking work. How about that? It would at least be more believable. The whole bringing in an NPC to just kill it outright, but then why are they there? Why is the party there? There's no reason for them to be there, considering the girl could have kicked over the stones and spawned your dumbass monster that doesn't make sense anyway. And then you could have just told the story. You could have given them some sort of like weird lamp that just told a story with smoke monsters. Instead of doing all this, you wasted 4 hours of their lives to tell zero story, accomplish nothing, kill 2 characters that they liked, and introduce 2 characters they didn't give a shit about. So what's the point? What did you get out of that? More specifically, what do they get out of that? Oh, that's right, nothing except frustration. And now you're going to lose all the players in your campaign. Good. I feel bad for this player because that's a horrible experience. You've had them worse than me, but I do understand that frustration. This is not like I don't know how many times we're gonna have to go over these dumbass stories where people just don't seem to understand the concept of stop forcing your players to play in a shitty book you wrote. It's like forcing someone to read your garbage fan fiction. Nobody wants to read your shitty garbage fan fiction.
Like, just
put it up on the internet for people who want to read it. Write a campaign and put it on the internet for people who are interested. Do not.
I think you know what I think. I think what it is that it's just it's the desire to get off on power and control. Right.
I half the time that might be true. I think the other half, these people genuinely think they're good at storytelling.
But it's still about the control. It's still about forcing people, and again, not even just like again, they want to see. They want to see their so-called magnum opus, their masterpiece. They want to see a person's reaction to it in real time, right? They want to get that instant validation and vindication right away to be like, to show. And again, it's not like it's not understandable to a certain extent, right? As a GM myself, and I don't know if you've experienced as much there, Sammy, but it's like, as a GM, when you run like a really freaking good session with people and they are having fun, they are engaged, they're like, you might even get a couple of like sweet dope like little like slip-ins of like their backstory or something that make them just go like whoa, or like oh my god, and you see that feeling can absolutely be, that is such a huge dopamine hit for GMs. Like, when you do it, just like you're like, dude, fuck yeah, I freaking did it, bro. That was amazing. I'm so glad they had a good time. We had a great time. They enjoyed it. They had like, I was able to kind of make that happen. And so I understand why a person might want to try and like you get that desire to force that kind of thing, right? But those situations, those experiences, those moments, they can only really come about through allowing it to progress naturally. You can't force those moments because otherwise that ruins the whole aspect of it in the first place. And even with this guy, it's like, I don't even know what he was going for. He clearly was trying to do like, some crazy, interesting, almost like, mind, psychological horror thriller, mind break mess with kind of thing. And it was just like, if you're going to do that, you got to give your players the ability to get a little bit more information, more knowledge. Like where are you directing them? What do you want them to do? If they're making rolls, it's your job as the GM to be like, hey, if they're not getting it, then you have to then give them a little bit of a push. If you're going to railroad them anyway, then
at least help
them to get to the actual point of this thing. Like, and oh my God.
It's bad enough that they stuck them in this stupid train wreck. It's worse that then nothing they did mattered.
That's the biggest thing. It's like, you are going to forcefully get them like sucked up into the mist. Fine. They already asked you. They literally were like, hey, is this mist weird? Is this mist interesting? Is this mist like, you're like, it's just normal mist. Just totally normal mist. You told them not to roll a check because it was just normal mist, even though they asked to. And lo and behold, it's not normal mist. Like you can't.
Yeah, I don't like. So I'm gonna give some perspective to this. You are in a magical society full of people who do magic and see magic and know what it smells like. If you are gonna whisk someone away to a different dimension, some sort of pocket plane, no offense, but anybody who's used teleporting magic before or seen it, there's probably a feeling to it. You don't have to tell them where they are, but be like, yeah, you're not in the same place you were before. That's something you would know. That's something you'd notice because why it doesn't change anything, but it gives them a piece of information. Why are you having them roll? If you're not even going to give them the opportunity to get any information, a 26? A 26.
26%. And not only that, you're
26.
not rolling. That shit is the biggest thing. Like if anybody ever wanted to get the answer to the question, can a GM cheat? Yes. Yes, they can. This right here is a perfect representation of a GM cheating. You do not get to affect the players just willy-nilly, okay? The whole point, and again, I've said this before, one of the best ways I love to look at player characters is that you, as the GM, you're the overgod of this world, right? You are the apex overgod of this world that you have created, that you are running in right now. The players around your table, they are visiting overgods of other worlds or of other things, and their player characters, they are avatars of these other overgods. They are the only thing in this world that you do not have direct control over. And so therefore you do not get to just control or inflict any kind of thing you want on them without some way for them to resist, to dodge, to lessen, anything, whatever. You don't get to just say, hey, a projectile hits you and you take this much damage. You don't get to say, hey, a thing explodes. You don't get to make a save. You just take all this damage. Like that's not how that works. Yeah. It's literally got the game mechanics for a reason. Otherwise, you're literally just a pack of freaking 5-year-olds sitting there going like, I hit you. Nuh-uh, no, you didn't. Yes, I did. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. Like, that's the point of it being a game with the foundation. Now, to be fair, those rules are flexible, they're moldable, they're bendable, and maybe even sometimes they might even be breakable, maybe. In very specific, isolated instances, maybe. But in those instances of them being moldable, bendable, flexible, stretchable, breakable, whatever, those are still things you have to be clear on with the entire group who that is present. You have to establish expectations of what is allowed and what isn't. And then when something maybe pops up, then you talk about it there or after the session to be like, okay, this is the new expectation or this is the new baseline or guidelines that we're going to follow because this situation is kind of brand new and just popped up. And so this is going to be the expectation going forward from here. You can't just arbitrarily change shit and to suit whatever stupid freaking idea you have in your mind randomly without discussing it with anyone else. This was a 9th session that they had. Apparently the other 8 were perfectly fine. They were following a module, and then all of a sudden in the 9th session, the GM gets bored and is like, hey, we're going to do this different thing randomly that I want to do. Like, okay, fine. You know what? Drop a surprise on your players. That's fine. But you better damn well make sure that it still incorporates the baseline expectations you have set to this point. Otherwise, go screw yourself. Go screw yourself, Todd. This GM is from henceforth known as Todd as well.
I think just Todd's going to be...
These are Todd. Yes, no. Every negative aspect, these guys are all Todd. We don't care what their names are. They're Todds. Fuck Todd.
Yeah, I think... Yeah, fuck Todd. I think my main issue is still the fact that it seems like they were just bumbling around for hours. Four
in real life hours. 4, I believe it was. Like,
they bumbled around in this fucking shadow realm for 4 hours, and you didn't give them one single inkling of what to do. Do you have fun sitting there doing nothing? Is that what you have fun doing? Because it doesn't sound like fun to run either. So I don't understand why someone thinks this is cool and okay and also a good time and also I'm such a good storyteller. Because you're not, Todd.
Well, that's the thing. He probably feels like, well, they're screwing up my story now because they're not doing what they should be doing. Like he literally said that. He literally said to the cleric, he's like, you lost your wing because you weren't proactive enough when the mist showed up. So that is your punishment.
Mean?
He literally asked you to do a freaking check to see what was up with the mist, and you told him no.
He got a good check too.
Well, he did it after the mist rolled in. Like he did it after they transported, but at that point though, he still didn't even get to see where these imaginary like godly projectiles were coming from to literally destroy their whole group. Like, bro, you know what? We're going to move on. We're going to do one last story, I believe, for the day. This one's a little bit of an extra long one. It's known as Were We the Problem? Just as a little heads up, bit of a trigger warning. It does have an essay warning on it for you guys. So just as a heads up for anyone with that particular thing, to give you, again, a heads up and a warning about that. Posted by user Drifter Storm. Hi, first time here, so pardon anything wrong with the format. This was a story my friend's husband handed me and asked to post since they don't really use Reddit much themselves. My friend's husband has since given up on D&D, but we think this is still haunting him. Edit to add, I see my friend forgot to mention this, but the list of rules was the DM asking the players what their no's were in the game. He did not want to trigger or cross a line and make his players feel bad. The only no my friend and their husband had was what was listed below. Otherwise, they were okay with anything else. This one is going to be a long one, hopefully not too long. This is a horror story of how my husband and I were treated in a campaign a while ago. I will leave a TLDR at the end if you don't want to read the whole thing. Names are not listed to protect identities, as the purpose of the story is not only to help get it off the chest, but to also teach an important lesson in communication. Without communication, respect, and compromise, no campaign will succeed in the long run. Let's begin with finding the post on r/IFG. The DM had advertised an interesting homebrew world he had created based off a story he was writing. To get this out of the way, this is an inexperienced DM having only DM'd 2 campaigns prior. The setting seemed interesting. To keep it simple, a war between 2 nations happened with neither side emerging the victor. What stopped the war was a cataclysmic event because of tampering with forbidden magic that nearly tore the world apart, and had the gods not intervened, everything would have been destroyed. Ever since, magic was forbidden except for in one city. My husband and I applied for and received a prompt invitation to an interview. During this interview, we went over our character sheets. I made a female sorcerer, while my husband made a 4-forged artificer, which cross-classed to fighter gunslinger after it became apparent his artificer was not able to provide any value to the party due to the power disparity. This is where the conflict started to occur as my husband began crafting his character with the DM, trying to create an amnesic character who had fought in the war many years prior to the start of the campaign. But after a long discussion, the sheet was completed with his approval. Our character backstories tied our characters together as sort of a bodyguard and a protected. Our big brother / little sister dynamic. One of our absolute no-nos to the DM is taking away player agency, e.g. charm, mind control, etc. I also mentioned no ERP or unsolicited advances. I will note my husband has trauma around people who tried to control him in his real life. After the interview, we waited a day before the DM decided the roster of 7 players. This should have been where me and my husband decided to bounce, but we decided to wait and see how session 0 went. The party consisted of 2 barbarians, 2 artificers, 1 warlock, 1 rogue, and my sorcerer. As it turns out, session 0 went splendidly. We all got along well and had a good time and picked up a little quest for the next session. Session 1 is where problems began to arise and stack up over the course of the campaign. When you need to plan encounters around 7 players, things get hectic and overwhelming. My character was almost killed in an encounter with at least 10 enemies, even though I was positioned in the rear of the formation. My husband's character kept rolling unlucky and getting critical failures for attack rolls. The DM decided that each of these failed rolls resulted in his character missing where he was aiming with his crossbow and instead hitting other party members. After the session was over, we talked to the DM about this as it was something my husband disapproved of hitting another party member. It was resolved after that and didn't happen again. What we should have specified back then as well was we didn't like friendly fire, whether it was coming from us or other players. This will come back again later. Now, I will take a second just to say this about that. Like, I personally don't dislike the aspect of potentially if it's a nat 1 critical fail or fumble, the opportunity or potential for harming or hitting friendlies that are currently engaged in combat with a target you are also trying to hit. Like, for me, that still seems logical and realistic, at least, because that can literally happen in real life too. That is the potential risk of attempting to fire long range like attacks, even close range, to the same thing. If you don't work in tandem, you run the risk of potentially harming a friendly that is currently engaged. If you guys are like moving and weaving and striking, and you know, that's just a risk that you run. So I will say right off the bat, I feel like maybe they're a little bit unfair or a little bit too sensitive about that thing.
I think it depends though, because if like say he's shooting and the DM's just like, well, you rolled a 1, you randomly hit one of your friends, that's not really how that works. Right?
No.
It should be, if I'm shooting and there's someone in the way and I roll bad, there's a chance to hit them. But like it should be, okay, well, re-roll the attack against their AC, you know. But there's
I'm
ways
okay
to do
with
it,
that
there's
too.
ways to do it that are fair, and it doesn't to me at least, it sounds like this is just hitting random people, which doesn't really make a whole lot of
I
sense.
also feel like, again, like, I mean, again, I don't feel like it's a terrible thing to have, because because again, if natural 20 should have bonuses, I'm also of mind like natural ones I feel like should too. Like, that's just kind of fair is fair in that way, in my opinion, in terms of balancing. I also agree though that I feel like maybe it shouldn't automatically just be like a, oh, you absolutely hit another friend or whatever. I usually like to run it too, like roll again to see if you hit them. But at the same token too, same thing about like they don't like having player agency taken away by like spells such as charm, mind control, etc. It's like there are actual spells in the game that allow you to do that, and we've talked about this before. There's a difference between using a spell to gain control over a player character for a time, and there's just, again, like literally stripping agency away from players. Like that, once again, I feel like those things, there are actual fair, reasonable ways you can do it, as well as as long as you don't cause any shitty, disgusting, unnecessary stuff. I still feel like that's okay to have. But continuing on. Come session 3. Yeah, okay. My husband had been approved by the DM to craft guns in the campaign. Important to note that the DM said gunpowder was rare and my husband would have to figure it out through the DM's instructions on how to make the gun. It was settled on charged crystals being the power source for this gun, but they would be extremely hard to make. The ability on how to make them kept changing and being inconsistent to the point it was causing frustration between the DM and my husband. The DM was heavily making him rely on another player for help in crafting these stones, despite being competent enough on the character sheet. My husband's character and this other player's character did not like each other in the game due to the persistent antics of this player's character to put their party in danger. EX, using Fireball to attack a group of enemies while allies were still in the radius, and putting a few of them at 0 HP. Now that is exceedingly annoying. Once again, we just talked about this. Establish a consistent baseline expectation of how certain rules or things are going to go, and then do that. Don't keep arbitrarily switching or changing things in an attempt to maybe make the thing difficult or harder. Or as a GM, if it's like, oh, I don't like that my player is doing this, I feel uncomfortable, or I don't feel ready or able to handle this, so I'm going to keep trying to make it as difficult for them as possible to do. Like, don't do that. Communicate clearly with them about your concerns or your thoughts or your feelings and opinions, and try to reach a mutual, like, consent or mutual compromise about what you're trying to do. Like, don't just start doing this stuff. As well as the fact, if they have another problem player that's literally kind of just being a loose cannon, literally, and harming their companions with a fireball spell, like,
yeah, this isn't
okay, he's a new-ish GM. He's already run 2 campaigns, apparently, in the past, so we can give him maybe a slight pass for being like, hey, a lot of new GMs do suffer from that mentality of being like, well, it's a tabletop RPG, and so if he wants to do that, I can't stop him from doing that. But it's like, if this player, again, is just straight up harming their fellow players without any real reasoning or logic behind it, and he's just saying, it's what my character would do, then that character is a liability now, and your other players have every right to be like, if you're going to attack us, then we're going to attack you and take you out then in turn. Because you're actually more of a threat than these other enemies at that point.
Yeah.
So, like, continuing on, though. Come session 3, we raid a bandit camp after being tipped off that they were robbing caravans to start up an international conflict. Our goal was to find out who hired them when raiding. When the raid was concluded, we discovered a cave near the bandit camp. Deep within the cave, we fought an evil druid who had been sacrificing animals on an altar to create magic-infused gems. I wasn't aware of this at the time, but the DM told my husband that the caged creatures near the altar could be used to make more magic crystals. Of course, he wasn't going to do that and gave up an opportunity to make his gun, which added to the frustration. After searching for the camp for anything that could be used as a magic gem, the DM finally has him find a diamond. The DM then says that either my character or any of the other magic users in the party could infuse the gem with magic. I gave him a guiding bolt spell to infuse the gem with. When my husband got the chance to make his gun, this gem would be invaluable for making a magic gun. My husband was able to find another gem along our travels, and he also finished his prototype gun and infused one of the 2 gems inside it. Sadly, this gun was destroyed when he tried to take the first shot. We had entered a friendly NPC manor and were being hosted there before they snuck us out of the city. During the stay, we accidentally opened a portal to somewhere and were unable to close it. The enemies the rest of the party were fighting kept returning after being dealt with. Despite my husband's pleas for help to power the gun from the other players, they promptly ignored him to continue their fight. He was able to fire a very powerful blast with mine and another NPC's help that resulted in destroying the portal and all that remained of his gun. The party completely ignored these efforts and pretended it closed on its own. Okay. This gun would never be made as a series of events forced my husband to give up the gem to create a diversion for our party to escape a hunting party sent by the kingdom. My husband was able to craft a plan for the party to get through the city without being detected by the party. I think that's a bit of a typo there. He had me overcharge the gem with magic to create an improvised explosive. After escaping, my husband just sighed at losing that rare gem and was a bit upset that certain party members didn't recognize the sacrifice he had made to create the party's escape opportunity. But he let it go for the sake of keeping peace. For us to escape the hunters, we had stolen a ship and were setting sail for my character's home where magic was not outlawed. Along the way, another incident sparked conflict between my husband and the above-mentioned player that he did not get along with. During a hectic battle to preserve the ship from unknown entities, the player cast Fireball and caught the party in the AoE radius again. This time, my husband's Steel Defender was incinerated, and the DM said he would not be able to repair it. And just to note, my husband was playing the Battlesmith subclass for Artificer. He would be left without a Defender. We also discovered on the ship that they had a large gunpowder stock they were unwilling to talk to my husband about. Okay. Another huge big red flag here. Do not take away a character's subclass ability. Don't just say that he can no longer do it. If he has mending, he should be able to then at least start to repair. At least, maybe it'll take a little bit of time, but don't just literally take away like the biggest aspect of a player character's subclass feature from them and just say, yeah, that's gone now. Don't.
Yeah.
God damn it, dude. Continuing on. I would like to note that up until this point, my husband's character had been getting ignored by the party. Even given his multiple attempts to naturally open up RP between him and them, the only time he ever saw them approach him was to ask him to clean up a huge mess they made of the captain's quarters, while he was trying to help the NPCs repair the upper decks from an attack we had undergone. The NPCs were also ignoring him and did nothing to acknowledge his help with the repairs. My husband refused to cover for their thief and snooping where they should not have been. Instead, he wanted them to come clean first with the captain of the ship, which they refused and got upset at my husband for doing what they asked of him. Fast forward to us making it to my character's home, and this is where things start to reach their climax in this story. The DM wants us to enter a tournament, but my husband's character had no reason to get involved and wanted to seek out a contact. After much discussion, the DM would. That's a little bit of typo. After much discussion, the DM would give a gun to his character, give being in parentheses. This puzzled him since he was under the impression that he would be crafting it when he got the necessary ingredients and components. The response to this was to just go with it. Once again, the fireball loving magic user committed friendly fire during this tournament, and the DM allows it to happen. My husband had an encounter with an NPC from his past and with some odd information. It turned out that the DM had tuned out when my husband had made his backstory and just recreated the backstory afterwards. That's a huge no-no. My husband slightly went with it just to keep the peace, and I had not known this was happening at the time. While in the tournament's waiting area, we encountered the tribe of the Barbarian. My husband's character I believe another typo, called out the tribe for abandoning their own and standing up for their barbarian. This did nothing to strengthen any connections or invite RP between them later on. I have a brief, uncomfortable encounter at the city's inn where a patron tries to flirt with my character, breaking one of my rules of not wanting unsolicited advances. Instead of focusing on it, the other player that was mentioned already decided to flirt with him. Cue another uncomfortable situation where that player character and the touchy NPC go upstairs and we are given a descriptive scene of the behind the doors scenario before it finally faded to black. At this point, I'm no longer tuned into the session. In between sessions, my husband and I go seek out a jeweler as part of our out-of-session activities. Well, it turned out that this jeweler had other motives that we were blissfully unaware of, nor had any suspicion of such motives. We were under the impression that since this was my character's home city, that there was no reason to suspect a reputable, I assume she might mean disreputable shop. Fast forward to our final session with this DM. The jeweler, fuck, I can't say this word easily. The jeweler, thank you, ended up charming my character with a cursed necklace. Then, against my husband's wishes, did the same to his character with a cursed mask. He had been restrained and was suffering a PTSD attack, so he had no choice in the matter since his character was unable to do anything. We had enough and dropped the campaign. Jesus, I didn't realize till later, but my husband was struggling to enjoy the campaign and had been wanting to leave a lot sooner due to thinking he was the issue player or the problem player. Due to his constant back and forth with the DM had grown tired of him, asking him to leave the campaign because he just did not want to deal with this shit anymore. My husband agreed and left without a hassle after multiple attempts in trying to work this out. The main tension had been over how my husband would craft the gun. He never brought up with the DM any issues with the players, later on wondering why the DM agreed to let him play such a character in the first place at all. I also learned my husband had asked the DM if he wanted him to change characters to something better suited to the DM's game. He had gotten confirmation that his character had been okay the whole time. TLDR, the DM made our experience in their campaign less than satisfactory by breaking some of our established boundaries and disregarded some elements of our characters' backstories, but the other players seemed to be enjoying themselves. Were we the problem? End post. Geez, so where do we even start with that one? Sammy, what are some of your thoughts?
So, to answer their question, you may have unwillingly been the problem, not at your own expense or fault. I have a feeling that the other people at this table may have wanted a different game than you and your husband, and that they were having a good time, and because you weren't having a good time, that other player and the DM were making your situation worse. It might have been on purpose, or just humans tend to do things subconsciously, even without realizing it or intending it, but still, obviously, they still do it. I don't think you're a problem. You clearly outlined your rules. You clearly asked if things were okay before joining. There was communication. It sounds like the DM and this other player were not willing to actually work with in those boundaries or listen at all to what you were saying. let's see. I feel bad for the husband in the sense that they really didn't do anything wrong, and wanting to work with the DM but not necessarily agreeing with the DM the whole time isn't necessarily a problematic thing. It speaks more
No,
to the people skills of the DM. It also sounds like this made the husband very nervous most of the time, and he didn't want to pester the DM, which makes it even worse because now you're being made to feel bad like you did something wrong when you really didn't. Me personally, there were red flags from the beginning, but
I mean that's what I was gonna say too.
I 100% understand why they stuck with it,
Yeah,
because it seems like there were still high points and it just kept getting worse and compounding.
it was
Um,
not a it was a gradual decline
but the
rather
first
than
time that someone fireballs the group by accident is when I'm leaving. I play with people that I've known for a long time, and sometimes it is inevitable that they're like, the only spell I can really do here that works is this. You're next to him, and I'm like, well,
that's
I make
that
I make
happens
good red save.
sometimes. Yeah,
They ask me first. They go,
yeah.
"Is this okay?" And I go, "Yeah." Um, that is obviously not how this went down. Um, you're not. Yeah, you guys are
The
not the
problem.
problem
You
at
guys are
all.
not the problem. I going off of that, my opinion, like I feel not like conflicted, but there are certain aspects of this that like I see from different angles. So overall, like definitely, like right from jump, like I said at the top two, it's like they had certain like boundaries and things that they didn't want to be crossed. I can understand that, but at the same token, I'm also like, well, here's the thing. Like there are actual spells and things in the game itself that allows for this. And so if you just don't even like the aspect or the idea at all of your player being, controlled, restrained, or whatever, like that that can be a little unrealistic in my opinion in terms of like, okay, what if your character gets, tied up or like restrained like with shackles by guards or enemies or whatever, like things like that can happen, like it's like that's I feel like that in essence, like if you are completely and utterly against that ever happening, then you are kind of getting to the point of it being like, well, you maybe want to play a little bit of a more fantasy game where like, and that's fine. But for me personally, I'd be like, well, your characters can be, if a spell hits them, if they fail to save, it's going to affect them like it would anybody else. And you can then keep making saves to break free of it. But this is still something that happens. Same thing with like the nat one hitting other things. It's like I feel also to balance out. But I will say, for me, for natural 20s, I usually like to utilize a variant rule, which is the heroic crits, where it's like when you crit on a natural 20, you just get the maximum amount of damage from your damage pool, like, and then you get to roll again. So you will always do a decent amount of damage regardless of what you roll. Because one of the worst things is like, oh, you get a nat 20 and then you roll freaking 2 ones. Like you have like a dice pool of like 3d6 and you get to roll 66 and you roll ones on all those sixes, dealing a total of 6 damage. That sucks. Like that's just shitty. So it's like I'm like, you know what? Let's just do heroic crits. Because you at that way you always feel truly vindicated and validated at you rolled that 20. Same thing with the nat 1 though. It's like, hey, you roll a nat 1, some kind of fumble or some kind of detrimental effect, in my opinion, should take place. Whether it's, hey, you're a melee fighter, you fall prone. Like you slipped, you fall prone. Like, and you can't get up this turn. Like that's the detrimental effect. You rolled a 1, but that also applies to enemies too. They roll a 1, they slip, they fall prone for this round. And they have to spend half their movement to get back up the next round or something. Same thing if you're firing, like a ranged weapon at a target and you have a couple of other individuals in that area, you roll a natural 1, you might end up accidentally hitting your friend. Not even necessarily because you missed, but because as they're fighting, they're moving. Maybe you clipped them on accident. Like
Even like it might not be full damage.
that's what I'm saying. You could also be half damage or whatever. Like just again, that stuff just makes logical, rational, reasonable sense to me as being like that's a balancing act. Now, this other shit that I absolutely do not agree with, like that, those are the only caveats that I have to it of being like, maybe your expectations should be a little bit more reasonable or manageable in that way. And we don't even really know still the full context of what their expectations were in regards to those things. But either way, I still can understand how those would be frustrating and uncomfortable. The other aspect, though, which is vastly more in the majority against the GM, is like, and apparently the other characters, because I also don't understand. Apparently, session 0 went great, and they apparently got along with everybody really well. But then all of a sudden, as they're playing, all the other player characters and the GM just ignore the husband, or just start ignoring the husband entirely. Which that shit just doesn't make any freaking sense to me at all at this point either. Like, that's just like, what? Like, why? They're engaging, they're doing this thing, they're literally helping, they're trying, like that stuff just start, like, I'm like, why? What is the like? And also another thing being is apparently she said it was just her husband, where apparently she didn't feel that way. So they apparently were interacting and engaging with her, but not the husband. And I will say, I have personally experienced this kind of thing too, where it's like, I have had people like either have some shit against my character or maybe against me, and like start like fucking with me or screwing with me or poking me and my character for some reason. I'm not sure why. I'm like, I don't even know what the hell I did even. So it's like, I can definitely believe that something like that could happen too for no real discernible reason. So that's the thing that's really shitty and annoying. I can absolutely understand frustration and aggravation with that, as well as the fact that it's like, okay, he's a battlesmith artificer. I mean, I would say, like, as a battlesmith artificer, it's not obviously the best artificer class, but it's still up there. It's still one of the better ones for sure.
I mean, there's only a couple options.
That's what I mean.
It's armor is the best.
I was gonna say, aside from armorer, but battlesmith still has great options.
Battlesmith and artillerist are kind of in the same vein for me.
Yeah,
they serve different purposes of the same coin.
But they can still be relatively effective.
I played a battlesmith, and I did get my dude taken away. Not taken away, but the character got sidelined to go fix him. So I want to make sure that was kind of an agreed. I wasn't playing at the time, but they did that to my character while I was gone. There's something, okay.
Because you can actively repair and fix your
literally at the end of a long rest, you can create a new steel defender if you have smith's tools with you. If you already have defender from this feature, the first one immediately perishes. The defender also perishes if you die. That's it. You can just create a new one.
That's what I'm saying. There's no reason that you should be able to make another one.
Yeah, not for that. There's no story reason for that. Mine had a story reason, so at least I can say.
So it made sense. Like you specifically, like, you know, and they did that again specifically to just give you the reason to leave the party for a time.
It sounds like, you know, they already fucked up in these aspects, but now on top of that, you're throwing in the fact that they described a sex scene.
I mean, well,
they specifically asked not
no ERP. Like you don't, and again, we talked about that before. Look, if you want to have, like, again, relationship dynamics, aspects, even sexual encounter things in your campaign, that's all perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that in any way, shape, or form. However, there's no real reason to be describing said scenes in vivid, explicit detail. Like, again, I guess if everybody's okay with it and you guys have a kink thing and everybody's down for that, okay. But, and you know what? I won't even say like, okay, like, fine, that's fine. You know what? That is fine.
Only if y'all agree on it.
As I'm saying, you're all consenting adults. There is nothing wrong with that. However, point being, if there are people who are like, I don't really want to be exposed to that in my game here, in this game, just fade to black. Just fade to black. There's not, like, you can just be like, you know what happens.
Implied things can be just as fun.
Implications are just as good and just as fun. There's no reason to force out your, again, fetish, your kink, your whatever onto other people. You don't need to do that. Just fade to black. You can have relationships. You can have, you know, more sexual encounters or interactions. Just fade to black. Okay? Give the little, you know, the wink to the camera and go away.
In one of my campaigns, one of the characters, he's the sexiest dwarf. That's what we refer to him as.
That's great.
It is not a weird thing. He did not make it weird. He just always played the character as very charismatic. He's a barbarian.
He's a barbarian. We love those.
But he, like, genuinely, he is the most fuckable dwarf, is what we refer to him
as. You go.
Now, he has had relations with people before. Guess what? I don't know what happens in
You
those.
don't even know what happens in them
Because it's
That's fine.
all it's all fade
It's
to
all
black,
implied. It's
coy,
all,
hush, hush, nod,
yeah.
nod, wink, wink. Like we as
You're
the
keeping
party,
it classy,
like
you know.
as
You're
the
keeping it
I guess
classy.
the point I like the for me, the reason the party knows is one, he's kind of alluded to it. Two, we went to a
Sure,
meeting, one of the people was there, and she like blushed when he like saw her.
it's
And it's one of those
fun.
it's one of
It's
those things where you're
funny,
like,
cute.
oh,
Like again,
I know what you guys did.
it
And like
leaves it to the
he,
imagination. There's nothing wrong with that in this instance, you
and I
know.
think for me, you can tell that him as his character is interested in this character for more than just that, because he'll call her on the sending stone or check
Yeah,
in to make sure she's okay after something bad happened, like stuff like that, where you're like, oh, this is this is just normal role play. It's not gross. There's no weird thing, because my DM said he's like, I'm not role playing that.
yeah. We don't have to.
And I
That
said,
is
and we
not
were
a
all like,
thing.
he's like, I'm not role playing my friends doing gross shit. Like, he's like, I'm not doing that. He's like, I don't want to have sex with my friends. And I was like, that's good, good for you. Like, that's cool.
Hey, we respect that boundary 100%. There's nothing. Yeah, we're okay
That's
with that.
it's an easy boundary to
It's
respect.
very easy.
And
Like again, like
it's not that hard. I don't
here's the
know.
thing.
You can have
You want to
weird.
play a nasty, gross, or just very explicit raw game. Go play Fatal. Okay. Go play the TTRPG Fatal. Please don't look that up unless you want to be scarred. Don't do that. Okay. I'm just saying, if you have that interest, watch it at your own peril. Okay. Or research it at your own peril. But that's what you do. All right. You go do that kind of stuff. That's fine.
Oh,
Oh God, you looked it up, didn't you? Jesus.
there's a Wikipedia page about it.
Yes, there's a whole thing about it. It's a thing. And it's good Lord. So
Is this the one
anyway,
where you get to measure your size?
yes, and other things.
I have heard about this.
You
Okay.
roll for like pregnancy sometimes. You just it's a whole God. I went down this rabbit hole myself because somebody had mentioned it in the story before, and I was like, what the hell is that? And I was like, oh God. Like, anyway, point being, let's move on to another aspect too, being like the whole gun scenario. Stop stop it.
Sorry.
Do it on your own time. We'll do it after this, okay?
I don't need to.
You
I don't need to read it
cannot.
anymore.
You really don't. You really don't. If your morbid curiosity gets the better of you, fine.
No.
Do not expose the rest of our innocent audience.
No, I wasn't
to
gonna
this
say
now.
anything.
Okay.
I wasn't gonna say anything.
I don't
want it.
Okay. Either way, the whole gun debacle, that whole thing. Look, GMs, I get it. Sometimes a GM can say yes to shit, especially if they're apparently new or newer, that they're like, they did not understand what they were agreeing to and getting into before it happened. I get that. What I will say, though, is I'm also a fan of like, look, you're allowing the gun, the weapon, the item that you allow your player to have, to get, can only ever be as powerful as you allow it to be. You do not need to give them like an uber ridiculous, crazy, whatever thing. You know what? Even in the chance that you do, and you're like, I don't feel good about just taking it back now because that makes me look embarrassed or bad or whatever. Okay, fine. Just make your monsters, your enemies, your whatever around, not even around that gun, but able to deal with that thing a little bit better if it makes sense, right? Like don't give them like a one-shot kill, rail gun weapon that can just whatever. Like if it's something so like, give them just a normal rifle. Give him like a rifle that shoots like energy out of it, but it deals like 1d10 worth of damage. It's a freaking firebolt or an eldritch blast. That's literally all it is. You just flavor a spell with this gun, with this weapon. That's about it. Like it shouldn't be a huge thing. I will say also, though, I don't really understand like what they were talking about, saying like, her husband wanted to become more of a gunslinger because his effectiveness or contributions to the party was beginning to like immensely fall off at a higher level. I mean, first off, she's a sorcerer. There's another artificer in the group. There were 2 barbarians, apparently. It's like you had, and there's a warlock. Like, none of you like I don't really understand. Again, I just don't see how he would necessarily be falling off in terms of his ability to contribute. But either way, he felt that way. If you feel that way, fine enough. Fine. He wants to make a gun. Artificers are kind of able to do that thing. They literally have gun proficiency. They have firearm proficiency.
Yeah, but I mean, like the whole thing with guns is that they have a loading property. There is an offset to doing more damage because sometimes they don't get to attack.
Well, I was gonna say, it's the same thing as a crossbow. Like,
yeah, but the reality is that if you fine, you think the gun's too powerful, you don't want it, like, make the crossbow better. Take the loading property off the crossbow, leave it on the gun. There you go. Now the gun there is a direct up and down to using a firearm. Yes, per attack you do more damage. You don't get as many attacks because sometimes you have to reload. There's so many other ways to do it without just saying no.
No, or even like making it such a huge freaking chore to do. Again, like I said, the guns, there are literal default guns they have in D&D books, in the actual source book materials. Again, one of the highest ones, they deal 1d10 of damage. Again, that's just a firebolt. That's a level 1 firebolt or a level 1 Eldritch Blast, where you don't even get stronger as you get up. You know what I mean? It's not that powerful. It's not that crazy. So you know what? Just let them attack more times. Let them, like, or rather, if they have multi-attack, forget the reload property. Just let them fire energy beams out of it. Like it's like a freaking cantrip. It's the same thing. It's like it's not that complicated. It shouldn't be a whole issue and problem. And then again, him like sitting there being like, I'm gonna keep arbitrarily switching, the stats or the checks that you have to use in order to actually fabricate and make this freaking weapon. It's like, stop. Why are you making this so hard and difficult? What is the problem? What is the disconnect? GMs and players, think about it for a minute. What are you actually upset or worried or scared of by giving, like, just flavor shit? It's not rocket science. Magic is incredibly powerful. Like, barbarians with the right melee weapon are incredibly powerful. Just, it's not a thing. If this player feels like their contribution to the party is lacking for damage or whatever, even though, as an artificer, your damage isn't really your biggest thing anyway, either way, just give it. If they want to make a gun to make it more, just flavor it. Give them a spell or an ability, because that's the whole point of an artificer. You literally flavor your magic, but with like contraptions, gadgets, technology. So just give him a firearm or a weapon that basically does the same shit as a cantrip, as firebolt, Eldritch Blast, whatever. It's just not that freaking difficult, man. It's not that big a thing, bro. It's not that deep like this. Like, it's just like, no. Geez, man, this whole thing. And again, as always, you got to take it with a grain of salt. It's hard to say, what was the true situation or circumstance or context of all of this, because we're only seeing it from the wife's perspective. Because it wasn't even like the husband wrote this. Specifically, the wife wrote this after the fact, and she herself has even claimed she didn't know a lot of the shit that was happening at that time. So this is like
second hand.
Yeah, this is secondhand, maybe even third person perspective almost, because it's like, yeah, well, technically third person, because like she gave it to her friend to then type out too. Like there are a ton of like, typos and spelling errors or issues in this thing, which isn't a bad thing or even unexpected, because it's a long post. Like they wrote out a lot of stuff, and so it's completely logical or completely like potential or what the frick is the word? God, my mind is just jumbled up today from all this shit. It is not unlikely that there would be spelling errors or grammatical errors. All right, but you know what? With that, I do believe that that we are going to be heading out at this point. Thank you guys. We appreciate you. If you stuck around up to this point, honestly, please do leave a like and a comment in the video down below. Tell us what are your thoughts on some of these stories that we've read today? What are some of your own experiences or stories that you guys have had playing TTRPGs, whether it be D&D, Call of Cthulhu, Warhammer, whatever else? Honestly, anything. Please do be sure to subscribe and share the channel if you haven't already. We really appreciate that as always. We hope you guys are continuing to enjoy kind of what we're doing here and what we're putting out. We know me and Sammy certainly still do enjoy it. You know, we try to keep pretty consistent with this. And yeah, thank you guys as always for your support and your time. We hope that you guys have a great rest of your day. And we will see you next time when we dive back down into the archive.
Bye, guys.
Bye.